I'll do a very, very short intro. We have the person, Felix, from the building who will come and who they have opened for us to be here today with FinTech Belgium. Myself, my name is Toon van Acht. I'm an entrepreneur in FinTech from data.be, so I'm spending my days in business data. And I'm the moderator of many of our events. And so it's a pleasure to see that we, after 1 year of going full online, we are now back with a very limited audience here in Brussels and people from home. So thank you very much for hanging in there with us. And without further ado, I'm gonna pass the word to Area 42. It's the innovation part of Del Credere. At least that's for the people who got vaccinated. It means you're old enough, right? So they still know the old name. Credendo for the ones who are waiting to get vaccinated. Probably that means they've gotten your marketing through other channels. So Felix, you will give us a little bit more explanation first on what tradetech is about.
So, hi everybody. Hi, I'm Felix. I'm Innovation Scouting Manager at Area 42. And today I will give a short introduction of tradetech. So the next slide, please. All right, 1.5 trillion US dollars. Does anybody have any idea what this number represents? Anybody? Nobody? Well, next slide, please. This is basically the trade finance gap. So what is the trade finance gap? The trade finance gap is the difference between trade financing that has been requested by companies and trade financing eventually given to companies by banks, insurance companies, and so on. This is a number that was an estimation that was done by the Asian Development Bank, but it's a number from 2019. And since 2019, I think something happened, right, to the world? Yeah. So next slide, please. So right now, the ICC, so the International Chamber of Commerce, estimates that 1.9 to 5 trillion US dollars is needed to get back to the levels of 2019. So this means that the trade finance gap right now is actually between 3.4 to 6.5 trillion dollars. So this has increased massively. Next slide, please. So trade finance is basically here, according to us, to bridge that gap. Sorry for the loud speaking. To bridge the trade finance gap. And tradetech is actually a new industry. The definition to us is that it's a new industry that leverages technology to improve the trade of goods and services. So that is how we see tradetech. So next slide, please. And tradetech, according to us, has four main domains that are really interesting to look at. It's supply chain management, financing, treasury, and risk management. And within all of these main domains, there's a few subdomains. Next slide, please. So supply chain management, that's a very important one. Within that domain, it's really absurd, actually. For example, just documents when you're trading something, when you're importing something internationally, just documents are still lots of time paper and need to be sent around and need to be signed. And just digitizing this process alone is already very innovative and needed for the industry. Next slide, please. Then we have financing. Financing is really essential, and trade finance, typical trade finance, is really accessible for corporates, but for the SMEs, it's way harder to access. And that's why new ways of offering finance, new companies that offer finance in an easier way, simpler, more understandable way, new products even, that's really what's needed within this industry to make tradetech really work. Next slide. Treasury is another part where cash management, for example, is essential for lots of different companies. Because, yeah, cash management is something that you don't always take into account, but it can really kill your company if you don't manage your cash well. For example, Agicap, a company out of France, I think. They recently even raised $100 million to really make cash management accessible for SMEs. And then next slide. And then risk management. Risk management is also super important when you're trading. Of course, as any company, you want to estimate the risk of the company, the trading partner you're collaborating with. But typically, it's super hard to make good estimations. And what you see nowadays is that there's lots of different companies that find new ways to minimize risk. And it goes to lots of different potential tools that you could use. Where, for example, in reputation scoring, what you see popping up lots of times is just websites that help you rate companies. So some sort of a new rating system where you can rate the trustworthiness of a company. And yeah, I added it here. IBAN First, in a way, is also a way to manage your risk. According to us, this is still a bit too narrow. Next slide, please. Because tradetech is only really valuable if you link it up with other industries, other innovative industries. So when you plug in trade technology with, for example, logistics technology, which is a very important part, if you, for example, ship a container internationally, use some sort of a new logistics IoT chip that tracks a container, well, if you have that data, if you have it online, always accessible, it could be very interesting to, for example, create some sort of a financing product that taps into that data. And that way, we think really the magic happens when you combine these different technologies, these different industries together. So at Area 42, our vision is basically to create a world where trade is frictionless. And for that, we are trying to create a trade innovation ecosystem. And specifically for us, this is a community where we bring together trade tech entrepreneurs online and also in some real life events. We run an innovation lab where we try to ideate on ideas, run experiments to validate them, build MVPs out of them, and then also run an accelerator where we grow these MVPs to real products, real ventures, and also invest in companies when relevant. And tradetech, I think it's really like a new scene that you see popping up. And we are partnering with a few different associations on this. We are partnering with FinTech Belgium, of course, Laplace FinTech, a networking organization out of Paris that I think is also a network member of FinTech Belgium. And we're also collaborating with the World Economic Forum on their TradeTech initiative. So I hope this was interesting. This is, for me, like a very brief summary of what TradeTech is. And I think you'll see from other presentations some real-life use cases on innovative products being developed and disrupting the TradeTech world. Thank you.
Thank you very much for setting the scene here and for including many of the next speakers on your slides. So that will make the introductions short and we can catch up. And I forgot to mention that Lode Vermeer sitting next to you, who's the Chief Innovation and Strategy Officer, will join us for the Q&A at the end. So we can drop all our questions to both of you when it is regarding to the services of Area 42 and Credendo. Patrick, voilà, you're next. You were traveling a lot between Brussels and Paris, because I dare to say that IBAN First is a Belgo-French, depending where you are, you put the country first initiative. And you recently did a rather nice transaction at the 200 million euro capitalization value is rumored. So can you tell us a little bit more about who became the majority shareholder and where you are going with IBAN First?
Sure. Thank you for the introduction. Happy to be here. Yes, indeed, we announced 2 weeks ago now a new partnership, or actually a nice transaction with a American private equity firm called Marlin Private Equity for a 200 million deal value. The idea behind that is to obviously, I think we can switch to the first slide. I'll address that and catch up with the time as well. So the idea is to reinforce our positions in what we consider as our home markets. As you said, Belgium is where we are headquartered. France is a strong market for us. We did an acquisition in the Netherlands at the end of 2019 of NBWM, so we also consider that as an important market for us. So that's a first key area of development. Then investing, as you said, as most of the tech companies in our product and in our R&D. And lastly, it's accelerating our international development. With Marlin Equity on our side, we are well weaponed to accelerate that, not only from a greenfield perspective in new countries, but also from an M&A perspective, which they are willing to push very hard with us. So that's, as I said, this slide is actually already a bit outdated. I mentioned that we had raised 46 million euros to date, but that was before the Marlin private equity deal. We're around 250 people across those geographies I just mentioned. And what we do, maybe that's the most important part, and I should have started with that, obviously, but I'll get back to that in the rest of the presentation, is that we facilitate international payments for small and medium companies. And in that respect, I think we're very much in the trade tech sphere. But I'll get back also to the more complex products related to FX hedging and things like that. But I started my presentation, and we can switch to the next slide, by giving you also a bit of an idea on the market where we are in and what it represents. I obviously did not do the research myself. I took a little bit of information from McKinsey. They do every year a very interesting report on the payment industry. It's globally a 3,000 billion market in terms of volumes, and it represents in terms of cross-border a market of $165 billion, which is obviously huge. Asia takes the biggest chunk of this market with approximately 70 billion. And we are active in the cross-border area in Europe. I think the key trends that we see and that McKinsey also has highlighted in their report is e-commerce getting more and more important, and obviously the crisis, and I'll get back to that on the next slide, has accelerated that. So e-commerce is getting more and more important, and in the e-commerce industry we see an increasing weight of marketplaces as opposed to websites that are run by the vendors themselves. So we see that there is a need for tech companies, fintech companies, to facilitate those payments, manage those payments for those players, which for now is not something that we do at IBAN First, but we address small and medium companies mostly today. So on the next slide, what I wanted to highlight is what the impact of the sanitary crisis was on this environment. We noticed it at IBAN First. I think Q2 was a difficult month for everyone of 2019, because people had to get used to the new setup. So in terms of, I'll talk first about client acquisition, which obviously for most of the tech companies and innovative companies, which startup is a very important factor. That was difficult during the period because we had more troubles to reach people. They were sitting at home for the first time, so difficult to reach. So we had definitely an impact there. But on the payment side, it was interesting to see that whatever happens in the world in terms of macroeconomic circumstances, people still need to make payments, and companies still need to make payments. So we had a decrease, as you can see on the graph, but it was quite limited compared to what we had expected. And there it's quite unequal between industries, obviously, travel being heavily hit and other industries thriving through the crisis. So tech companies, Zoom, and biotech and medical devices got a very good performance during that period. Yeah, and to finalize on this point, and that's I think the accelerating factor of the sanitary crisis on our businesses is obviously very important. I think companies realized during this crisis that it was important for them to have access to their financial services through digital platforms, so they could have access to it 24/7 and not having to go to physical places, and definitely an accelerating item for most of the tech companies, I think, today. So on the next slide, I actually show where we come from, and I think that's basically what was mentioned in the presentation before. It's a couple of pain points that small and medium companies that are active in the international trade are facing. So doing business internationally requires you to have a bank account in different currencies, to be able to have access to some certain financial services. And we'll get back to that, but potentially being able to hedge your positions in order to make sure that you safeguard your margins. So those type of services were, at the time when we created IBAN First, things that were not easily accessible by all small and medium companies, and for most of them were reserved to the somewhat larger companies. So basically, we wanted to solve the issue of difficulty to access the services, also the level of service of the banks, not always accessible, not always open, and finally the pricing issue when you operate in internationally and you need to have access to FX and to liquidity. You often have difficulties to know what the exact commissions are that are taken by your bank, at what time they execute your trade, and things like that. So we wanted to put transparency into this business, which is typically what we've done with IBAN First. And I think those pain points that we had identified at the time, and we can move to the next slide if everything's working. Yeah, it is. Were confirmed actually when we started the business, and with the clients that we have today, it's still the same pain points. When they talk, when they tell us what they see in the market, it's still complexity in FX operations. As I mentioned, opening an account in different currencies is still difficult within a bank, costly and time consuming. Doing a trade takes a lot of time as well. Sometimes paperwork is involved, as you mentioned. So digitalizing this whole process has been a great game changer for our clients, and has helped us grow very rapidly over the last few years. So basically, what do we offer today, and what makes us, and that's on the next slide, someone that is definitely evolving in the tradetech environment is that, as I mentioned, we solved the currency account issue. We're able to offer accounts in 35 plus currencies by the click on a button for free. So that's a differentiating factor compared to traditional bank, which, again, according to McKinsey, still own 90% of the market. So when you talk about competitive environment in our space, obviously there are other fintechs in the space, but it's still the traditional banks who hold the gist of the market. So offering real IBAN accounts, nominative IBAN accounts to clients in different currency is a game changer. And on top of that, we added the two legs of an international payment in order to facilitate the trade business of our clients. So on one hand, access to liquidity, which we do in a very transparent manner. Clients can log in. When they do a payment, they will see the exchange rate of the moment and the exchange rate that is applied to them. We offer them access to all the hedging products that they can or want to have, and we give them advice, or we do not advise, but we can explain what those products are. So forwards, flexi forwards, and products like that. Finally, we also added some import lending solutions. So on that side, we're also almost moving to the cash management side, treasury side of the trade tech. So So this is basically what we are trying to do. And on top of that, obviously, we remain a payment institution, so we need to be on top of all the new technologies in terms of payment, so being able to provide our clients with instant payment. And what we just launched is the payment tracker. So there again, we can switch to the next slide. I think that's something that is leveraging what is developed notably by Swift, but giving access again to the SMEs to what can be compared to the parcel tracker or DHL of payments, enabling our clients, but also their suppliers to follow where their payments are, which give them a lot of security on their payments and also a lot of visibility to their suppliers. So that's an important one, and we're continuously trying to add new products to our offering in order to be on top of the payment industry. And to finish, obviously we're in Belgium today, and I think it also is important for companies like ours involved in the tradetech to be able to connect to their clients. And here in Belgium, Isabel is obviously a huge payment platform. So very early in the development of IBAN First, we were the first fintech available on Isabel, enabling so the SMEs that are on Isabel to have access to our services, but also the clients that are not yet with IBAN First to see the rates that we could offer, and therefore try to facilitate their international and trade activities.
Thank you for that great intro, and I really look forward to the questions. For those that are following, Isabel is owned by the large Belgian banks, and you are disrupting part of their clientele, helping them with at better rates, with better service. So it's a really interesting dynamic that the innovation at Isabel, although owned by the banks, they're teaming up with you to help people to do this in a niche, but in a better way than it used to be done. So start preparing those questions, those sensitive questions too. We love those. The next speaker is from Edebex. He was already introduced by Felix too on his slide. So Tony Auger, who is delivering innovative development for Edebex, and he's going to tell us a little bit more how Edebex is helping customers with trade finance solutions. So feel free to join us online, activate camera and microphone, and the floor is yours.
So thanks to Felix and to Patrick introducing Edebex, and I think we share lots of things in the DNA. Edebex is a fintech, Belgian fintech created in 2013 in Brussels. It's an online marketplace where companies can sell invoices and investors can buy those invoices. So we are talking about receivables, open receivables, that are financed without their due date. So the closest financing product is factoring. I think it's known by everyone, and we are trying actually in Edebex to reduce as much as possible all the disadvantages of this factoring product offered by the banks. Edebex has created an algorithm which is able, like from in a few seconds, to give you a price on an invoice that you want to sell on the platform, and to determine the risk as well that we will take on the debtor at the end. So Edebex is a platform which brings together several types of companies. On one side, of course, the sellers, so companies in need of cash flow. On the other side, investors, which are also companies which are using their excess of cash to invest in the real activity, let's say. And the third part is the debtors, so the final clients, the companies which have to pay the invoices from the sellers. From the start, Edebex financed more than 700 million euros of invoices. And on the last year, for example, we financed 54 million euros, which was a bit less than 2019, but we have faced, as every financial institution, we have faced the crisis, and the fact that from most of the states helped the SMEs by giving some guaranteed credit. So we can notice that since the beginning of this year, the trend is getting back and higher than last year, because we financed in 5 months more than 100 million euros of invoices. We have actually financed more than 2,000 sellers since the creation, worked with 3,000 debtors, and financed more than 30,000 invoices. Marketplace, the marketplace is working with a credit insurance, which is the basis of the acceptation of an invoice. And Ödebex tried to bring disruption on this factoring market by changing a bit the way to accept a file, as only the solvency of the final debtor will be taken into consideration to accept or refuse an invoice. And of course, we are checking as well the criteria linked to the invoice, which need to read some criterias, acceptation criterias or eligibility criterias. And for some of them, and the most of them, it's we accept invoices higher than 5,000 euro, VAT included. We need to be on services which have been produced. We are not going on advance payment. We need to be on invoices with payment terms, of course. We are not going on cash invoices, cash payment invoices. And the invoices must be sold by companies situated in 5 European countries: France, Belgium, of course, Netherlands, Luxembourg, and Portugal. And we are able to process invoices on debtors situated in the same countries, but we're going to add as well Germany, UK, and Italy. So as you can see, the DNA of Ödebex is clearly international and European first. And we are trying to remove the borders as well. Everything can be treated in the same portal. So let's say a Belgian seller can sell invoices on his Belgian debtors, or French or German, within the same portal. So the accessibility is quite easy. What we try to do is to bring some new features on the market of factoring. First, as you could understand, we are trying to reduce the committee to access this type of financing. So only based on the solvency of your debtor, we are able to give you a green or a red light. So everything will come from our credit insurer, who will provide us the rate of a debtor and the credit limit that is able to give as well. We try to simplify as well the functioning of a factoring contract, as Ödebex is quite flexible. You can sell only one invoice if you want in the year. You have no engagement at all. You don't have to commit on a certain turnover to sell, as it's usually done by the banks. It's quite accessible. We are an online platform, so you can use and sell your invoices whenever you want, 24 hours, 7 days a week, whenever you want, really. It's quite speed, because we can finance the invoices maximum 72 hours after our audit is completed. There is no obligation at all, no committee, no personal guarantee to deliver. So it's quite really open and available for everyone who is reaching the criteria on the invoices. And we are even first sharing as well the need to be transparent about the costs. So all the costs are known straight from the beginning when you are uploading your invoice on the platform. So there is no hidden cost and no surprises or bad surprises at the end of the process. Ödebex has launched its platform based on the flexibility of the use by any kind of companies issuing commercial invoices. But since 2 years now, we are having a lot of corporate companies coming to us as well to check what we can do for them, and because maybe we are more flexible than the banks to develop some like really personal products for them. And that's why last year we've launched the fixed contract. So now a client is able to engage and commit himself on a certain turnover, which has great interest as well on the price, of course. We've launched a product of supply chain finance. So now I'm thanking Felix as well because he talked about it already. So any kind of company situated in the debtors countries I've cited before can sign a contract of supply chain with us and help their suppliers to get paid faster. And we are offering to those companies as well the possibility to extend their payment terms, staying in the scope of the law, of course. And so the advantages are quite numerous. And the last but not least, Odebex is developing right now some APIs, to be able to integrate marketplaces and to support sellers on marketplaces as well, and wherever they are and wherever they sell. So as you can understand, Odebex 2021 will be a good year for Odebex, I guess.
Thank you, Tony, for also reminding us that this transparency element is very important when it comes to being a member of Fintech Belgium. We have a little echo in this room, but I'll continue talking. And I'll do this by immediately going to our next speaker, Nicolas Jor from OneSpan. I would say try to open your mic and your video. Yep, there you go. And if you could take the floor, that will release us from an echo. So looking forward to what OneSpan is offering in the trade finance industry.
I will introduce you to OneSpan. So our business is to do digital transactions, managing compliance, digital signatures, ID verification. So the idea is really that transactions are global and trust is local. What this means is really that following the pandemic, following the recent events we've had to go through globally and even locally, all organizations and countries have centered back towards more local legislations, creating new rules, regulations that make the landscape for global transactions a lot more difficult to navigate, and making things more complicated to allow digital transactions, contract signing. So the idea is really that most organizations historically have always been doing business in a face-to-face manner. They've been doing it manually, maybe sending out documents, printing them out, or mailing them. So not necessarily in a perfect way to, I'd say, conduct business, especially with the events that have happened lately, where a lot of businesses, they've just ground down to a halt. They've stopped. Nothing was happening for months and months and months. So the idea, we've seen a real shift in the industry, and I'd say it's even across industries, because we typically work with a lot of banks, very large banks across the world. We cover all kinds of different use cases and businesses with them. But what we've noticed in general is that pre-COVID, all their communications, interactions were essentially face-to-face. Documents were typically always sent manually or in person. And more recently, post-COVID, there's been a complete shift in the interactions. And for trade financing, it is one of the activities that is the most document-based. That meaning it is also the one that is the most exposed to risk, to fraud, document fraud, manipulation of information, false information, fraudulent identities. So what we've really been pushing is establishing trust across organizations. Establishing trust means being able to secure transactions, both financial transactions and contractual transactions, but it's also about being able to verify identities. So going through a KYC process where we know who we are registering through an onboarding process, but also it's about being able to secure transactions and secure also the devices. So OneSpan allows to secure transactions, devices that are used, and also verify the identities. So moving on, what is really needed in the current world, and to be able to digitize business and especially trade finance? So it's really a solution that allows you to have a worldwide legal recognition. So as I mentioned earlier on, the landscape has changed, is becoming more complicated to navigate, and is becoming regionalized, even though transactions are going global and booming. So we have eIDAS regulation in Europe, which is harmonization of digital signatures for the European region, but this is only valid in Europe, meaning if you want to sign documents in Brazil, in South Africa, in Japan, or other areas, they will all have their own legislations. And so finding a provider, a solution that allows you to have a global coverage is essential. The same problem appears for ID verification upon an onboarding process or any agreements requiring a higher level of security. Most providers, most vendors will be regionalized, meaning they will be able to verify IDs in certain specific regions, but not offer a global coverage. So for example, we do have in Belgium, there are eIDs, there is also It's Me, and there are other technologies that allow to verify driver's licenses, passports. But a lot of these are very Belgium-centric. As soon as you want to do international business, well, you will be limited with these local providers. And this is where finding a provider that can offer a global coverage is essential. And in order to stay always compliant, high security is important. That means having the highest standards in data protection and also data privacy, but also, of course, the local compliance to local regions. So, for example, whether it's Nigeria, Brazil, South Africa, they all have their equivalent to the GDPR. Sometimes very inspired from the European GDPR, but with their own local specificities. Having a platform which is available around the clock, of course. Doing business, you need a platform that will work 24/7. Remote signing agreement, of course. Device agnostic, because you need to have the flexibility to adapt to your business partners or customers' needs. But an important point, and I cannot stress this enough, is audit trails, meaning the capability to track each and every action, have a full trail of proof of everything that has taken place, but also all the elements that you may have used for digital signatures, securing devices, or strong authentication, or ID verification. And all these can, of course, and should be able to be integrated within your own IT environment, applications, and so on. So really what we are looking at is a solution that needs to be accessible both in branch and remotely. So if you meet someone face-to-face in a meeting in your offices, you need to be able to use this solution on any device to be able to go through an onboarding process, an e-signature, and of course stay compliant to the local regulations. But the solution needs to be able to work remotely, which means being able to do an ID verification remotely, going through verifying all the data of the ID cards, biometric facial comparison, and other elements that can be done. Now, going remote is essential, and we've seen a trend and evolution over the past 18 months with a strong adoption for remote onboarding, remote digital signing. But we've also noticed, and we've had feedback from a lot of our customers, that we still need a touch of human interaction. And having a touch of human interaction really means, okay, people have been separate for many months already. In some countries, they've been in lockdown for over 6 months in a row, meaning they can't see anyone, they can't meet anyone. Sometimes it's just because of travel or distance that there's no possibilities to meet in face-to-face. But some agreements, some contracts require more than just being able to click on a button to sign. So there is I'd say a further opportunity and option to incorporate human element within this digital transformation. So it's really about securing the access, having real-time communication in a secure and encrypted environment where you can go through the whole process of digital signatures, ID verifications, in an equivalent to, I'd say, a video conference, where you can take any business partners, any customers through a contract, through an agreement, through different terms and conditions, perhaps even negotiated indirect, but still being at a distance. And all this is recorded, registered. All the elements of proof will, of course, be saved in one single unique audit trail. So you will then have a document with a recording that will be encrypted, tamper-proof, really made so that you have all the elements to enforce a contract, enforce any agreements, and be able to have a full tracking of all the actions and activities that took place. So what we do as OneSpan is maybe in between RegTech, legal tech. We also work with InsurTech, to come back to an earlier presentation. It's really the base of digital transformation is to transform paper processes into digital processes. And this is really the core of our business, but it's also about securing all these processes and the whole customer journey, and making sure that you have the most elements possible and the least options for, I'd say, fraudulent onboarding, KYCs, and all the steps that go through. So this is really the direction OneSpan is taking, and helping organizations across the board to digitize their processes. Thank you for your time.
Usual to Nicolas that indeed can hear us. There's an echo again. How do SMEs find all these different providers for these niche needs? So the open invoices, the foreign exchange, and they have a niche player for every of them. And how do you, as a provider,
that's a tough question, because we are a small company. So it means also that the power of marketing is lower than the big company. When you see the volumes of all those new players, including Debex or the other ones, they are reduced volume if you compare with the main flow. And then it's difficult for clients to know what exists and all the possibilities that we have in the market. Absolutely. And that's the challenge of all those companies, is to invest a lot in marketing to develop the market shares, and to target the right markets, the right potential clients. And the best is not always the one with the best product. The best is mostly the one with the best marketing services and the sales force. Maybe Patrick can share something on the sales force of Ivan first, because he has probably the same challenge as Debex.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, definitely. To your question, I think we are very much focused on SMEs, and I think the differentiating factor with the banks that we met, and I mentioned that they still own 90% of the market, is the way we go and target those SMEs to try and acquire them. I thought it was difficult during the pandemic, but definitely we have and I think B2B in that respect is also very different from a B2C business. So we've tried a lot of different go-to-market channels and strategies, and I think for us today, the what we call offline direct is still in a very important way. So it's also to one Spen's presentation. I guess meeting in branches is not or less important, but you still need to have contact. You still need to call the people and get them on the phone. So we have industrialized this process quite a bit on Ivan First side, as many companies have done. So with people SDRs trying to get the meetings, hunters trying to close the clients, account managers to try and, what you just mentioned, take care of the client, make sure that they know how to use the platform, that they understand the products and things like that. So that's basically a very important step for us to promote our products and get clients on board.
Maybe ask if we can get the mics back because they worked fine. No. You can hear us without the mics, you mean? Okay, so we're gonna pass the mics along, and we'll all wash our hands in between, right? I'll come along with the alcohol. Thank you for being my camera holder now. There you go. Now, this was a very. I'll come to Lodo with the response to this, because this is something as a fintech community we've heard for a long time. Many of us are spending that scarcely raised capital on marketing, and it's very frustrating to see a competitor with an inferior product doing a lot more marketing and then getting the traction that you would hope to have seen earlier with your own product. So a question to Area 42, and I'll bring you the mic, is how do you as a marketplace advertise your services? Ooh, now it's getting serious. There's alcohol in the game, but not exactly in our glasses yet. We have to wait for the drinks.
Well, first of all, we ourselves are not a marketplace. We offer services to marketplaces, and yes, marketing is always very important. Well, I will probably show my age now, but when you look at VHS versus Betamax, then yeah, the best one technically or technologically didn't win the market. So yes, it's a matter of having a good product and then starting with the right marketing, and try to make sure that you address your product via your marketing to the right players in the market. At this moment, we are basically too early in the cycle. We are in MVP stage or very early scaling phase. So one is Marjorie, which is basically a process orchestration tool for marketplaces. And we launched it in production beginning of 2000. So we're now in production 1.5 years. So we are now really starting to scale. And yes, now it's a matter of having the funds to go outside and go outside of the French and the Belgian market, because that's where we are with Marjorie. Second one is terms.tech. But with terms.tech, we are live since end of April this year. So we're just live. So it's a bit too early to really start marketing.
What were the learnings? Scaling up, you learn a lot from those customers. How complex is the orchestration with so many markets?
To be honest, technically that's not a big issue. Yes, you have bugs and you just have to solve them. But the biggest issue is having the right amount of financing at the right moment. That is the biggest issue, because if you have too much money in the beginning, it's not efficient, and if you don't have enough, then you can't scale. So it's really finding that right amount at the right time. And if a lot of people will say, but having it too early, that's never a problem. Yes, it's a problem because your shareholder will not agree on the low return that you provide. Yeah. On top of that, yes. Yeah.
Can we go online where you say no, that's not planned to progress?
So Nicolas or Tony, if you want.
If you want to add on this question, this is the moment that you try to unmute yourself, activate your cameras, and we'll give it another try to see if we can get you as part of this discussion too. So I think Nicolas is trying. Yeah, there you go. I hope you heard the question.
I didn't hear everything because there's a bit of
So the main question is, how do SMEs find you? Because this was a question about SMEs finding all the, you're doing the digital transformation from authorizations to identity management and so on. How do they find you? Or do you mainly go for larger companies who will then, like a hub and spoke, they will distribute or oblige their customers, SMEs, to use your platform? So that's the very concrete, the SMEs.
Thank you. So it's actually a very good question. We work with both small and medium-sized companies, but also very large enterprises. SMEs typically find us by going straight on our website. Actually, a lot of them go straight on our website. They download free trial applications and start testing our solution. Potentially, they can use our sandbox accounts to start testing and integrating into their own applications, or otherwise through local partners that we work with in different areas. But yeah, we do have actually a lot of small and medium-sized businesses that reach out to us because their needs are exactly the same as larger companies. It's not because they're smaller, they don't have the same requirements. But typically the easiest is to find us on our website. We are not the organization who have done the most marketing, so we don't necessarily have the biggest online presence. But within the banking and finance world, we are already very well known for that, for our solutions. I hope this answers the question.
This is one of the questions, like, are there real partnerships? Are you looking at each other, talking to each other? Are you referencing customers? I'll start maybe with Ivan first.
No, the clear answer is no, not yet, but happy to do so, obviously, and this event is probably a good way to start.
Yeah, exactly. I think indeed we're not really collaborating yet, but I think collaboration is essential, and you will see indeed in marketplaces with the API mindset, just integrating the ecosystem makes total sense. And sometimes for a certain client, really it makes sense to collaborate. For other industries or other clients, it doesn't make sense. And I think actually that's a very good thing, that it's an ecosystem, that it's very diverse, and that it's not just one big player. But that's typically what happens lots of times, of course, that there's big players that take over a whole market, because we're living in a capitalistic society.
Well, if I can add to that, one of the starting points for Area 42 is that we have also a community in Area 42 where we really want to bring all these different players that are involved in trade. We want to bring them all together and see how we can help each other. And so, for example, whenever we work on an MVP, then that is typically based on an idea that we had internally, but we're at this moment also talking with a PSP, and within this and a few weeks, you will probably hear about a collaboration that we will have with that PSP. We are talking to different other providers, and basically Area 42 does not exclude any kind of cooperation. It can go from the very traditional just project way of working all the way to an equity participation or into a kind of joint venture or a commercial contract, or nothing is excluded for Area 42.
To jump back on the question of the marketing part, of course, Odebex is using a lot of digital marketing, and it was the start of Odebex was only on the digital aspect of the marketing. We have an in-house marketing team who is trying his best to push our brand in the top of the financial companies in all the countries where we are. And beside it, we are developing a big network as well of partnership with many kind of companies, like brokers specialized in credit insurance, financing, accountants, whatever kind of companies which are treating relationship with SMEs or corporates. We can see as well that the specialized brokers of the end on corporate companies that usually are calling them to request a study on the market. So since the beginning of this year, we are part of this tour of the market. So we are pleased about it. And of course, we are trying as well to motivate our clients to talk about Odebex to their relationships and offering them kind of membership programs like partnership, and they can easily get some discounts on their services if they bring new clients as well. So that's the ways Odebex is trying to get his clients.
To respect the timing, we're going to go for the last question. I want to know from the room if there's anybody else who wants to ask a question. I'll bring over the mic. Anything you want to share with us? Anybody else who would like to be part of these marketplaces and platforms to connect? Nobody wants to take the mic? No? Maybe a question again, and to Iman first on the marketing. As a CFO, you know, like ordre de grandeur, how much percentage of the capital you raise was spent on marketing? Is it like 10, 20, 30%? Something you can say on that, or is it a company secret?
No, it's not a secret, but as I mentioned, in the three go-to-market strategies that we have, marketing is definitely not the most important one in terms of we invest in the brand to be known in the different countries where we are. But still, for us, it's something we're working on. It's a bit of a challenge, the inbound marketing. So we're spending roughly around 10 to 15% of the annual revenues on marketing.
That's quite acceptable. For many fintechs are jealous of you. I'm going to ask how the Odebex case looked in that respect.
I have a question, because we are talking about tradetech. You mentioned that the huge part of the market is in Asia on trading, on international trading. I would be interested to see what you know about the market, about the companies of Chinese companies coming to Europe to take the market. Is there a risk? Is there some movement? Do you know something about that? I think this could be interesting for us to know.
The scary question. We all want to know, how close are they?
It's actually a very difficult question. For me, the simple answer is you have to be extremely careful. The main reason for me is that China does not play by the same rules that we play by. Especially the European Union is a very strong supporter of the OECD, and the OECD has reasonably strict rules on trade, and especially on subsidizing trade and government support of trade. But China is not part of the OECD. China could be part of the OECD, but doesn't want to be part of the OECD. So what China typically does is when they organize a reasonably sized trade, then they have terms and conditions. And you really have to read your conditions very, very carefully. Why? Because at first sight, they talk about eventualities, and we humans are very bad at estimating eventualities. But when you're a good statistician, you can do reasonable evaluation of those eventualities. And Chinese, just like Europeans and so on, they do have quite a few good statisticians. When you don't take sufficient care, then you end up in such an eventuality, and then things happen. For example, suddenly China owns the harbor of Athens, namely Piraeus, and they own it 100%. And what happens then is that they don't live by the same rules as we do, namely when we take something, then we try to work with local employees. Chinese don't. So the whole harbor of Piraeus is now managed by Chinese, not only managed, but also operated. There is not a single Greek person that is still working there. Not a single one. And okay, we in Europe are awake, so it happened twice or three times, I think, in Europe, but it's happening all the time in Africa. And so when, as a European company, when you want to compete against Chinese companies in Africa, you need to be strong, and even then you typically lose. Now, luckily, the European Commission has woken up. Luckily, the US has woken up, and so now they are looking at the OECD trade rules to change them in a way that all the OECD members, that they can start competing on a more equal level with China. Now, you might say, yeah, but is it only China? At this moment, more or less, yes. Because the other BRICS countries, they don't do that. Brazil, Russia, India, South Africa, they don't have the same behavior as China. China is rather unique in that. And so, yes, we do have to be vigilant.
Coming in. So follow-up question, with all the goods coming from China, we heard about the Evergreen, Evergiven being blocked in the Suez Canal. Did you have customers impacted by this, and were they insured by, do you know about that? Any files coming through?
I don't know about it, and if I would know about it, I would not be allowed to speak about it.
I was fishing for one of those comments on those eventualities in the contracts that nobody thought about. Like, if your ship gets stuck, it's your problem, not ours. Okay. More questions? Last one. I think we're gonna go for the drinks and no longer have the alcohol from these, but have them in our glasses and bottles for those who like it that way. So many thanks for your patience, for all those who showed up here, and sorry for the echo. Big thanks to our speakers. Also very reassuring that when you have private equity taking a majority stake in your company, you can still wear t-shirts. So that's nice to know, Patrick. It's something the startup spirit keeps on going. So very encouraging. You can sell your company and still dress cool. And you want to tell us a little bit more about upcoming events, I think, right, Alessandra?
Not only. Hi, I'm just need to move in. I'm going to welcome Manon from Comet, who has been welcoming us here. So here you go, Manon.
Hi everybody. So thank you for coming. We are very glad to welcome you this evening, because I think we are nearly our first guest, because the building is not open yet. So sorry for the technical problem. I will promise you we will fix everything, and it's soon open. So we actually have 5 buildings in France, and this is our first building in Belgium, and we are really happy to be here. So we have meeting spaces for business, to welcome our guests for any kind of meeting. It could be training, but also just a cocktail to be together. And we really hope that could be enjoyable for Brussels too. So I think you have a drink waiting for you. So I won't take too long, but thank you for coming.
Thank you. I'd like also to thank our partners of tonight, Area 42. We have Edebex, Ivan First, and of course Comet. And yes, just to tell you, we have a meetup very soon on the 24th of June. We checked, there's no football that night, so you have no excuse not to come. It's going to be on payment, and it's going to be really, really, really super interesting. So we see you on the 24th of June, and I'm not going to hold you for longer. Thank you all for everything. Thank you, Nicolas, also for joining, Tony, and for you all, and also the participants online. If you want to have some networking online, I see that there's Adam. You just need to put your camera and microphone on, and you can be live with Nicolas and Tony whilst we are having our sandwiches downstairs. So networking can go on online as well. Okay, we see you. Good night. Thank you very much, and see you very soon. Bye-bye.